Welcome to the April meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. All members, is Elaine there? Well, there are three of us present, and Elaine will probably pop in via Zoom, but we do have a quorum. We have Mike Wood here from the State Budget Office. Mike Cassidy had some other business he had to attend to, so he isn't here today. And then Marita is here, and when we get to a report from the city, she'll introduce some of her colleagues. We need to approve the minutes from the January 24th, 2024. I thought that was a coincidence, right? How often does that happen on the same day, 3 months earlier? I hope you've had a chance to review them. And if you have, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The chair's report, I'll defer some comments until later in the meeting. Unfortunately, we do not have the city of Harrisburg here to present their economic development plan. We were notified early this week that they could not make a presentation, and unfortunately, we didn't get a reason either. I reached out to another person in the city who works closely with Jason and was not able to get a reason or get a stand-in. So I apologize for anyone who might be here for that reason. It has been a priority of the authority since we started that we needed a vibrant economic plan to make sure that the city is focused on the future as well as the past. And we will continue to press the city for this. And we went so far as in the last meeting to offer some funding to help them. That's how important it is to us. And so, again, I apologize. We will continue to work with them. They had a draft at some point, I think 4 or 5 months ago. Unfortunately, there were no actionable items in it. And I think along with my peers on the board, thought if you don't have an actionable plan, words become just pablum. So again, that's why we're stressing it, and it is very important, especially as we implement the American Rescue Plan money, as we look at, our tax base going up. We want to keep doing that. We need to attract citizens to the city. We need to keep them in the city. We need to attract businesses into the city, and we need to keep businesses in the city. And that needs to be a focus. And I think certainly anybody affiliated with cities and certainly all our friends in DCD know how important that is. So anything you can do to impress the city with that sense of urgency would be greatly appreciated by us and would benefit the citizens of Harrisburg. Anyone else have any comments?
I would like to say with your permission, Chair, that I think that we've been clear that we would be more than happy to collaborate with the city and with Jason, Denise, and we know that it takes teamwork to put together a comprehensive economic development strategy. It doesn't just fall out of the sky. And I know that everybody on the ICA board, as well as myself, are happy to help with that lift, because it's so important that the city have a comprehensive strategy.
Well said. Thank you. So we'll move on. The Marita is here today, and we forgot to put in the city update, which I think should always be the standing agenda item.
Yes, and I'd like to segue to the finance, budget and finance operation. I have brought 2 fine young men today to to present. Actually, one will
That's a
present.
real, I was just gonna say, look what he's, I knew that, I could tell that was coming.
So, about a month ago, we hired, Alex Burstein, and, he, hails from, Millersville University, right? Sorry, Millersville University, but he's from Bucks County. And, he has a math major and has a significant amount of, economic development and governmental ideas. He's new to both somewhat, but it seems to catch on quickly. And he was the one that played an instrumental role in providing the data to Jeff.
Okay.
He was able to do some pivot tables, some ratios, some statistical analysis. Of course, we collaborated with Charlie DeBruner and Bill Weinberger, who actually gave us some of the formats for the revenue forecast, which they've used for years and Brian has used for years. And of course, in the end, Brian was our savior because he was able to add some additional value for the transfers and the appropriations, because that's a moving target with ARPA and with the FNB field and with the Broad Street Market situations. So thank you, Brian, for being the eyes and ears that kind of really helped pull the final document together. I know he probably spent a couple of sleepless nights, but he's new and we're all trying to row in the same direction. So without further ado, Brian is going to present to you a summary of the financials up to date. Brian, if you don't mind coming up to them. And just introduce yourself just for the sake of the aisle.
Sure. Thank you, Marita.
You're welcome.
We should pass those.
Jeff, I'll
Yeah.
hand these off to you, if you would, please. I appreciate that. Yes, thanks, Marita. Board, I appreciate your time. Brian McCutcheon, accounting manager for the city. I wasn't sure really how to present anything today, Audrey, because I didn't see, the normal financial report on the agenda. And I thought, oh, maybe I could sneak in a couple minutes, but since economic development is not,
You are always,
I can relax.
no, you are always welcome.
Appreciate that. So the handout is, there's 2 pages on top for the general fund and 1 page that follows for neighborhood services. So now that we have a quarter under our belts for this year, which is always a good marker, and also coming up now, April's almost concluded. So that's a third of the year, but this focuses on the first quarter. And what's interesting about the general fund in this position, our cash position of approximately 25.4 million at the end of March is a good number in terms of how we compare that to the prior year. So as of March of last year, at this time, the city had in the bank 23.8 million. And you might recall, even that 23.8 was after the final payment to the bond insurer, which was around about 8.3 million. So that cash position, of course, was strong last year, but it's nice to see we're even a bit higher the end of this first quarter. The revenues for the month of March for the general fund on that page are quite strong. In both February and March, the city realizes the bulk of its discounted real estate tax funds that come in. People taking, or taxpayers taking advantage of the discount period. So that's why that's so strong. It's not a typical month of revenue. So that is the overview of where we are cash wise. And on the second page, I've highlighted just the year-to-date numbers by comparison on both revenues and expenditures. And it's a year-to-date, the first 3 months of each year. So revenue is almost identical when you look at March of this year compared to March of last year. Very, very close. Expenditures are down 18.6 million for the first quarter compared to 23.8 last year. And that the majority of that heavier lift last year was, as I just mentioned, the final payment to the bond insurer. There are other factors that reduce that decrease compared to prior year because of, I have the light out there where the city is more actively expending funds for capital expenditures. And unfortunately, our medical claim expenses continue to be at the high end. In timing of insurance premiums, and we experienced an increase in various coverages last year. Mainly our property insurance went significantly up, attributed to the unfortunate occurrences with the Broad Street Market and the water damage at the City Government Center. And the city also this year opted to increase its appropriation compared to last year to the redevelopment authority to help fund or assist its operational support. But again, all in all, overall, we're in a much slightly higher position categories. So that's a good result for the first. Any questions or comments on the general?
I do, if it's okay with the chair. Right, in the interim, fund balance submission that you provided us for our annual report. At that point, you had given us a general forecast of about $14.6 million as the projected end of 24 fund balance for the general. And that was higher, as we noted, significantly higher than what we had done in last year when we did the 2024 5-year financial plan. And so we were just hoping that maybe you can clarify that additional optimism is based on the other things that we have talked about, more specifically the growth in revenues that the city is seeing. Am I right in making that assumption?
Yes, that's still very fresh from what we produced for that update.
Right.
And I mean, it's a higher number comparative to prior submissions, but it's going down, that when you compare it to where we are right now.
Sure.
Right. And I think the bigger items that we have in store, you know, one of the big ticket items is the transfer that has to happen for the FNB field.
Absolutely.
Over to the senators. So that hasn't occurred yet, but that's something that's on the horizon.
Sure. And of course, there will eventually, just for those who aren't following, at some point, there's some funding from the state to help replenish some of those, the money that's transferred over there. But that takes time for the city to recover those.
That's right. And Jeff, I think you're referring to the related RCAP grant, the 6 million.
Right.
And I think it's timed out that we expect to see that hopefully not this year, but next year as the project unfolds.
So money out, but not necessarily any of it back yet.
Correct.
Because there is the delay between laying out money and having it returned. But overall, even though it's still going to be lower than currently, you are seeing growth in the forecasted general fund balance over previous forecasts. It has grown over time to be a more optimistic forecast.
Yes, and I think the biggest factor there that's helped the city is the growth in the EIT revenue base. And I think we adjusted our projection in what we just submitted to this board is a bit higher than what the original budget appropriation was.
Sure.
And that's because of being able to take another look at actuals somewhat, you know, to a point. And the sense is that it is strong, continues to be strong.
Good.
That is encouraging.
I don't know if you have a question, but I do have one more.
I was just gonna make a comment. Up is always good, down is bad. We're all
For expenses,
yeah, we're all for
And
that.
as Brian will tell you, it's still a projection, so,
Right.
you know, it's our best, the best made plans of mice and men, but,
Sure.
and we have gotten that
So
confirmed.
literary.
The Keystone was at our call in November,
January.
December, January, sorry. And hard to believe. And they confirmed that the EIT has been relatively robust, particularly for this city and for growth in the city. So we just hope that continues. One of the worries that we do have is the real estate tax and some of the issues there judicially that have some of the challenges. I'm sure you're
Yes,
experiencing
you're
that in
familiar.
Chambersburg as well. So, but we're cautiously optimistic with that. That's why we were very concerned with real estate in this version.
Sure.
And maybe a little more flexible with the EIT and the LST. And to the smaller degree mercantile, because mercantile is kind of slowed down a little bit.
That is correct, and you're right, so one of the storm clouds on the horizon that was identified is the potential for lower real estate taxes in the future based on commercial real estate property owners and certiorari and challenging their assessed value because they believe that they've lost value in their commercial real estate. So that is one of the storm clouds, but one of the other storm clouds, as Marita and Brian definitely understand and has been recently reported on, is the fact that the parking arrangement is not, although it's stable, it has not generated the kind of revenue that maybe originally pre-pandemic was forecasted to come out of the parking arrangement. And so I know that that's baked in, as they say. I mean, the budget didn't assume it. It's not anything that you're counting on. But obviously, that if you go back to pre-pandemic, there was a hope, a desire that the parking arrangement would generate more revenue for the city than it currently is. It just hasn't turned out to be the case.
Well, we could get into full discussion on that, but we'll stop there, but at some point, we
just wanna
probably
make the
should
point
update
that
that.
that's- Right, and there's a possibility that somebody has to look at that arrangement going forward and figure out what's in the best interest of the city. Because over time, and if you go back to when those arrangements are made, it's been quite a number of years since that original plan was put into place. And so over time, sometimes plans need to change, and that's a possibility. That's something that the ICA has also identified as a potential issue on the horizon, something that has to be dealt with. So I thought I'd mention it, because I like to mention it. But overall, it's very good. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, there've been some reports I know on the parking revenue, and it's been a bit off track, I think, because there's some confusing
Right.
parking tax or parking system revenue, and the parking system revenue is the big money, so to speak. And I know when you hear owed to city, it's not owed, it's not receivable, because that parking fund, for both the ground lease and the priority payment, they specifically adopted a settlement that said, at any point of any given year end, if you don't get what was originally scheduled, you're not going to get it. So that's just to
Right, that wasn't expected either, so.
right. Hence, we don't budget as we haven't been budgeting in recent years. All right, the page, the single page attached to the general fund is just the overview I always do on neighborhood services. And it's laid out the same. The first column is the main column that everybody really would like to focus on, because that's basically the trash utility revenue versus the expenses. And there's a park maintenance piece that's part of that one that's also funded predominantly with our trash, with the city's trash collection revenue. So for the first 3 months, the city experienced a net expense over revenue of $278,000, just for the neighborhood services fund. And so that cash position in that column, it dropped from roughly 4.7 down to 4.4. The thing to remember about that, and this happens twice every year, or twice every 2 times in each quarter. The first quarter had an extra pay period and an extra check. So, and as you know, the city collects its revenue. It's a monthly basis when it comes to the sanitation revenue. So that extra hit in this particular quarter happened, so that contributed to why you're seeing somewhat of a negative, for the first quarter. If we were in a, it's not, I won't call it a normal quarter, but the other two quarters just have 6 pay periods compared to 7. It would probably be the inverse of this. You would see a positive $250,000 to $300,000 revenue over expense. So I expect this to be a better picture, as we go through this current quarter. But overall, including the boroughs and those other 2 older funds that are still in effect for lien revenue that continues to flow in, because there are certain properties that are in the city's lien system. The Neighborhood Services Fund overall has approximately $6 million as of the end of March this year.
Do you have a sense of what the outstanding total is? Is it getting smaller and smaller? I mean, the worst was
I
like
think it's
13.
holding, it's
Like-
not much of a change at all
Okay.
in the outstanding balance. There is a little bit of an not much yet, like an uptick in revenue this year compared to last, which reflects the 10% increase in the sanitation billing rates for customers, for residential customers, I should say. But that really hasn't, it's not reflective of a 10% increase yet. It's still, it's much lower than that right now, but the previous delinquent balances are still in that $9 to $10 million outstanding balance range.
And I know that legal got another attorney to begin to tackle that. Do you see evidence of that?
If I know if Neil were here, he could comment on that, but even I've had informal discussions with our tax and enforcement office, because they look at, not that they would do the work, but they have a sense of collection efforts. And I think the city now is thinking a bit stronger as to trying to come up with a more proactive approach on trying to pursue the balances. You may know too, with the ARPA funds, there's several initiatives, including one that has $2 million to be applied to balances. And I'm not involved with that at the detailed level. Our separate department will determine that. But that money will soon be moved into the Neighborhood Services Fund.
So, Brian, I know we had talked about this previously with Ralph when he was here, but you're not, these receivables, these delinquent charges, you're not budgeting to receive those payments. So the
No.
budget of the Neighborhood Services Fund is not dependent on those collections to be balanced or to receive, to meet its goals for the fiscal year. Anything you may get from delinquent is extra, is beyond.
It's graded extra. That's correct. Yeah.
Not that we don't, obviously, the ICA has been talking for several years about the need to try to collect some of this delinquency. But you're not counting on it to balance the expenses that are in the neighborhood services.
That's correct. The focus in these many years now has been what we have the best sense of what real revenue is going to be. Based on past collection experience and what we know of some other revenue lines.
So similarly, if the ARPA funds help pay down some of that delinquency for people that have qualified for its use, that too would be some financial benefit for the Neighborhood Services Fund, which then maybe could be programmed in the future, either for capital improvements or for something. Because it'll basically go to fund balance, because it wasn't necessary to balance the anticipated expenses for the fund for this year.
That's somewhat accurate. I think we did actually
Or
budget.
you did budget.
But there is good news here. We did budget $1 million, but the mayor revisited the initiative and she increased it from 1 to 2 million. So what you just said, there's a $1 million play there.
And then you may not know this, or maybe you do. I know there are qualifications in order to get this relief,
Yeah,
but what if there aren't enough people this year to qualify for the entirety of the 2 million? It'll just roll forward to next year.
yes, it'll
Because
stay,
it'll still be before the ARPA expenditure deadline hits.
yes, it'll remain within the fund.
Okay.
And it'll be interesting to see what determines, eligibility, but, based on applying it to whatever customer balances may be applicable.
I know at some point there were the older constituents, and there was the poverty level.
I'm pretty sure the mayor has made suggestions
Okay.
as to who would be eligible for this forgiveness of delinquent trash fees. I'm just not sure if that's changed, or whether it's official, or whether a system has been created yet for people to ask for that forgiveness.
Well, it was pretty clear in the appropriation that they executed. And, Denise Hill is working with the mayor's office to outline who those folks are, but I think we have a pretty good handle on it. But as she said, the chair said, that, it may not be the total 2 million for
Sure.
2024. That's sort of a crystal ball,
Right.
type of concern, but I do have one other issue, if you don't mind. To update you, I met with Dave West and the consultant for the Steelton contract. And we're making very serious headway in developing that. We sent some amendments back to the consultant, who's loaded, Barton, I always say it wrong, but anyway. Yes, but anyway, they're very, very good firm. We've used them when we were at DCD. I know that they're excellent. I was at DCD, I should say. And they're an excellent firm. And so we're very close to a proposal to present to the Steelton elected officials. And I think from what I could ascertain, it appeared to be fair, but it's too soon to say that because it's just Marina Kelly's world according to her. But I do think we were making very good headway. And then once we settle that, we plan on moving right into the final 2 contracts with Pembroke and Paxton. So I will say the Public Works Director's done an extraordinary effort to try to stay on task with this and to get everything executed in a timely fashion as required by law. Excuse me for interrupting, Brian.
No problem.
Any other questions? Observations? Thank you, Brian. You have another thought?
I just have 2 more quick items just to let you know. For the ARPA money, as you know, there are various initiatives that City Council has recently reviewed via resolution approved. Several economic development programs and some health initiatives as well, and also funds dedicated for the city's pools. So what we've done in the Munis system is to create project identifiers. So we have that in hand now. That's in effect, and there's, based on the allocation that council approved, that's the budget amount, the project budget that's in the system to track each particular project. So we're mindful of how important that is, and then also when it comes back to eventually reporting
Right.
back to the federal side. And also relevant, it's still relevant. This week, in fact, the city is making good on a couple of debt payments. There's the PIB loan, PA Infrastructure Bank loan, that relates to the city paving project. That's a 10-year loan. That's not funded with the general fund. That comes out of state liquid fuels, but that payment is due 1st of May. And there are wire transfers happening this week to satisfy that. And as well, the city's minimum contribution payment for the guarantee it has with the HRA redevelopment authority revenue bonds associated with the Verizon Commonwealth Tower. So that, though we don't pay that directly, we fund the city's minimum contribution, which this year is $1,250,000. So that supplies funds to the revenue fund, and then the bank can operate accordingly to get the bondholders paid by the 1st of May. And there was some good news on that as well. As part of the funding that goes to that relates to Harristown Development Corp. And their operations. And this year it was quite a sizable amount that was contributed from that source. It was over 700,000. So that's a nice, that builds a buffer, which can be utilized, of course, for future maturity funding.
And this arrangement, Brian, with the Verizon Tower, that's really the last significant debt obligation. It's not a standard arrangement, but it is the last debt obligation that's on the city's book.
That the general fund has to deal with, correct, right? There's also a section 108 note that's HUD funded, and that goes through our building and housing department, and it's funded with CDBG funds. That's coming close. There's only, I believe, next year will be the final maturity on that note.
And there's also the small M&T streetlight.
Even better, Jeff. That's totally paid off.
Oh, I love to hear that. Another one done.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Anything else?
That's all I.
Thank you, Brian. Excellent
Thank
job as usual.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your due diligence in this extraordinary effort. Appreciate it.
Any other comments from you, Marina?
No, I just think that we're happy that we're able to present the somewhat better numbers. I think last year we kind of had the opposite situation. So it's always good to be able to, but of course, having the full 23 actuals really allowed us to give you the best information. And so that really, and having Alex kind of come in right at that moment to help pull it together, and then Brian to kind of put his final magical touches, but realistic and accurate, really helped us pull that all together. So I owe those gentlemen both a debt of gratitude, because it saved me from having to get any more gray hairs than I already have. But thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Section 203 report submission. And I really want to thank Jeffrey and for the yeoman's work in pulling this together. It is a statutorily required submission that we send to the appointing authorities as well as the appropriation leaders in both chambers. It's the annual report in which we report the state of the city and how we think it's functioning. And there are 4 points, I think, that stand out as far as what we pointed out, and it's that the 2022 audit is incomplete, but there is evidence that possibly in May, that may.
You can give you an update right now.
All right. Sure.
Yeah, actually, was working on trying to get our firm Boyer and Ritter, they were working this week on some of the more significant areas, including the OPEB and the pension. So the other firm that used to be the city's auditors, Meyer Dussel, has, as you may know, they assist, they provide some audit preparation for us. And they've completed their work, which includes the OPEB, the pension work papers, the neighborhood services, the utilities, receivables, the refuse and disposal, and also the compensated absences liability. So Boyer and Ritter is working on that right now. I still have more of the areas that I generally do. I'm still reconciling and working up adjusting entries for that. And probably the biggest thing left to do outside of those areas would be the single audit work. That they would, I think they're saving that until the end, of course. And I also do, there's a big lift on the capital assets section of the audit, so. And it's, again, there's been some intensive work related to Munis again this year with trying to get coding established and these, I mentioned the projects, for the ARPA money. And it's certainly worthwhile, but there's a lot more steps involved with creating these projects in Munis. In the old system, which was Panimation, it was relatively, well, the best way to say it is you could establish a task code or a project code within about 15 minutes, where in Munis, it's drawn out, and it probably takes, when I first got back to it, it took me over 2 hours to do. That was just a learning curve again, but it takes the better part of an hour so it's roughly 4 times as long to create what we were creating previously in Panimation.
It's progress.
So, but it's, yeah. But yeah, I think the audit will carry well into the month of May, at this point. I'd like to say we will be able to have a report issued by the end of May, but that's a push. I think it's more looking like, sometime in June. I'd like it to be no later than like the middle of June. But if I can help it, try to somehow manage to achieve it by the end of May.
So that's right, 3/4 of the way through.
Right.
It's just this final heavy push towards the, with that single audit is always a challenge, because of the lengthy and incorporated internal control mechanisms that have to be validated and so forth, so.
We've already talked about the economic development plan, so there's a heavy emphasis on that in our assessment. We talked a bit about American Rescue Plan money and just looking forward to seeing how that all gets implemented and how it stays on track and keeps going. And then we've long been interested in performance metrics, including performance evaluations, those sorts of things on the city side. And this year, as I guess Marita's communicated, or the city has communicated, the mayor is committed to formulating mission and goals for the city this year, followed by performance measures next year. And I think that, just anybody who's touched the for-profit world, that's just standard. And so, and I think employees certainly deserve performance evaluations, and they deserve goals, measurable goals that they're working for. And I think that's what the mayor has committed to. We did applaud the payoff of the bond. And again, this is it's supposed to be just an assessment of 2023, but it sort of deserves narrative if there's some insight gained in the first quarter here. So we take some license with that. And then we applaud the cooperation, certainly, with the finance department, having Marita here and, being able to, I think, just give us financials that we have much more confidence in. I think from my perspective, when we started nearly 5 years ago, you worried that it was back of the napkin or something, mainly because there weren't systems. So cash balance was called to bank and find out how much we had. So this whole integration and the ability to pull it out in real time is great.
Thank you very much.
So that sort of summarizes some of the things. There are other things that Jeffrey pulls in, just standard narrative on the history of the ICA, all of those sorts of things. So I think Kathy got a copy, and you guys obviously worked on the copy. You may not have had a chance to read it, but if you find anything, let Jeffrey know, because it's due April 30th. Which is soon. Although it's not too soon. Yeah. But so I do need a motion in order to authorize Jeffrey and me to submit it on behalf of the ICA by that deadline.
Okay, before we go there, the
Yeah.
one thing that I noticed in my first cut through was that there was not much in here about the impact of the fire at the Broad Street Market.
I think there's like one sentence
Yeah.
about it, that's it.
Do we need more on that? I see that as a major loss for the city.
It certainly is, in terms of the financial picture, it wasn't entirely clear in 2023 what the impact was going to be financially. And this is more of a financial report than anything else. We mentioned it because it's so important to the life of the city. But that's why we didn't go into great details about the planning. I suspect there's gonna be much more information coming forth about the finances and the rebuilding effort and all that. Maybe as soon as the next 5-year plan. So this is sort of a backwards look.
But I think Kathy, it was very, the sentence that is in there is, I think, your sentence.
How important it is.
How
Yeah.
important it is, and it's a chance for the city to coalesce around this to give it a rebirth and really make it the center.
It's important, but it's more, I think the next report will have to get more.
But as you read it, if there's a sentence you'd like to add to frame it more broadly. No pun intended.
Yeah. Always open.
Yeah,
Open for creative ideas.
Thank you.
Well, keep in mind, fortunately, a portion of it is covered by insurance, so that does eliminate a catastrophic impact on the city. But there will be certainly a financial impact, but fortunately, we were insured.
so a motion. One of my colleagues,
I'll move that we authorize our chairperson and our manager, our director to finalize the plan in accordance with the comments issued by the members of the ICA by the gentleman.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So Jeffrey, yeah, I
We'll
think,
finalize it, and it is will be a public document when it's finalized and placed on our website.
and so today is Wednesday, so maybe if we could have comments by the end of the day, Friday,
That would be perfect.
then that allows you to have at least a couple of days next week to get that organized. I turn it over to you, Jeffrey, for the manager's update.
So we do have, it's been a couple of months, but we have a financial report that you all received a copy of. Lots of bills coming and going, and there'll be more between now and the next meeting. We have less meetings, we have more bills between meetings. But we're doing very well financially. The authorities balance as of today is $175,157. So we're in a very good place. In terms of the fact that we're more than halfway through our fiscal year. So that's a good balance to have. And if anybody has any questions about bills paid, please don't hesitate to ask. I did recently fill out what's called an insurance questionnaire to have our insurance renewed. I don't yet have any idea whether our premiums will go up, but you've heard from the city.
Yeah.
Premiums going up is not an unusual thing, so it is possible that our premiums will go up in the renewal process as well. I promise to share all that information with the board when it comes in.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And yes, just a reminder, we went from 12 meetings down to 5, which segues a little bit into the next other business piece, because I feel comfortable that asking someone to take over the chair at this time is not as onerous as it was, and I feel badly that for all of us that we didn't revisit that, because I do feel sometimes we had meetings just to have meetings, and we do want to make, when we only have 5, make them really worthwhile, which is why it was so great to have Keystone here last time, and to bring up a dead horse, to have economic development at this meeting. So the time has come for me to turn over the baton from the chair. I've been doing this for almost 5 years.
Wow.
And I do really believe that we still provide good counsel to, the city, as frustrating as it might seem sometimes that we're really not achieving some of the goals we want to achieve. And the intergovernmental cooperation hasn't been signed. And the good news is, from the authorities' perspective, we are reborn actually when this agreement gets signed. That's when the 5-year clock officially starts. So all the work that we've done has been prelude. And then I'm excited to announce that Doug has agreed to be the next chair, so that in Doug's term, we should be able to see some good progress. And the other thing that's important is when that agreement is signed, the city automatically exits Act 47, another thing to celebrate. So I would like to nominate Doug to become the new chair of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, effective with our August meeting. And I'd like to ask for a second.
Second.
You know
What
that.
happens if you don't?
Yeah, right. You can vote for yourself, and
Had it. That's right. So I know Doug has agreed. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And because you never not want to vote for yourself, or if you lose by a vote. Yeah, that's right.
And Madam Chairman, if Doug is taking over as chairman on April 30th,
No, August,
Oh.
yeah.
Thank you so on this.
my August and my April's blend together.
Cover picture.
Oh, yeah, I changed it earlier on the report.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I had him as chair. It's only a draft, that's why it's a draft.
That's fine. I didn't even catch it.
Thank you,
Would've
I
been fine.
didn't think of that today. We'll change that. You will definitely be the chair.
Only because I read the cover.
And you're on the government there, so yes.
So,
The next report will be yours.
yeah, so Doug, any words as you embark on this new adventure in addition to all your other ventures?
Actually, I'll just start by thanking Audrey for exceptional service and exceptional leadership, and particularly through some of our toughest times in developing, gathering information, developing plans, and trying to work out solutions that work for the city and for the citizens. Now we note with delight that the city's in a much better financial position. The need for us to meet as frequently as less. But it's not just about the numbers, it's also about the staff the city has brought in, the technology and other systems that are being upgraded. And so it's a much better place that we find ourselves going forward. We're looking forward to continue that relationship with the administration.
Thank you, Doug. Well said, as always, elegant and eloquent. I also did want to mention that we're still seeking another candidate. I keep asking people,
So I'm an empty chair.
we have an empty chair and we want to get back up to the 5, because otherwise it's noted there are 3 of us here. And that's what we need to affect any business, so. And now we're open for public comment. And I'll turn it
We have a wonderful audience here today of state officials, city officials, and
Yeah, at some
public.
point.
So obviously, the board is more than happy to answer anybody's questions if there are any. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? You do go.
I just used the handout.
Absolutely, we'll get you a copy of the handbook. Okay, nothing else? If not, thank you all for being here. We really do appreciate your attendance.
But yes, thank you very much. And yeah, do watch the OWL every once in a while. Today, or you won't have to watch this one as a rerun. Jeffrey and I were joking that we post these and we wonder if anyone ever watches them. And we did find one person. And I suppose it's good, maybe to put you to
I
sleep.
think it might be my husband.
Oh, yeah, there's another one.
It's fine.
So anyway, yes, I echo your thanks to everyone who came, thanks to my colleagues. And The meeting is adjourned
We'll see you in August.
in August.
Okay, it's 3:50 p.m.
Yay.